Hey guys, welcome back. I'm pretty excited because in today's video, we're gonna be talking about some tips and some strategies for hunting the pre-rut. The pre-rut is one of the absolute best times to be in the woods because those older bucks in the neighborhood are moving much more consistently during daylight. Their movement becomes a lot more predictable, which will hopefully give you an opportunity to put a tag on your target buck. The pre-rut, along with the rut, will start around the same time every single season on your property. On the properties that we hunt here in mid-Michigan, the pre-rut starts around the 20th to the 24th of October. This is again where we start to notice an increase in daylight movement from those older bucks in the neighborhood, and those older bucks become a lot more predictable with what they're doing. Some years you might see more pre-rut activity compared to others, but just know that the pre-rut will be starting on your property around the same time every single season. And again, this is when you're going to be seeing more of those older bucks moving more consistently during daylight. And before we dive into the tips and the strategies for hunting the pre-rut, like we do in a lot of our videos, I do want to talk about the why behind what we're doing. And to do that, we need to take a look at what the bucks are doing at this part of the season and why they're doing it. The pre-rut, to use a sports analogy, is basically the pre-season to the rut or the breeding season. There's not a lot of breeding taking place, but the older bucks on and around your property know it's coming. They've experienced this before and they're getting ready. These bucks want to be as efficient as they can during the rut and breed as many does as possible. And there are a few things that the bucks on your property are going to do to get ready for the rut, which makes them more predictable during those last 10 days of October. And a lot of times, the older a buck is, the more efficient he's going to be, which again makes him more predictable if you know what he's going to do. When it comes to patterning a buck during the pre-rut, the first thing that I want to talk about is all the deer sign that you're going to start seeing popping up in the woods, primarily all the rubs and the scrapes. Now, it is important to understand that not all deer sign should be treated equally. You want to be focusing on historical sign, and sometimes this can be difficult to differentiate between what's historical sign and what's random sign, but the more you're able to hunt a particular area, the easier this will get. The first type of sign that I want to talk about that you're going to start to notice are the rubs on the trees. Now, I personally do not hunt over rubs, but sometimes rubs can tell you when bucks are using a particular part of your property. I don't do a whole lot of mid-season scouting on the properties that we hunt on. Most of my scouting is done post-season. So during the season, if I'm going to find a rub in the woods, it's going to be while I'm walking to my stand or from my stand. But every once in a while, when I'm walking to the stand in the evening or from the stand in the morning, I will notice a rub or two along one of the deer trails that I'm hunting. And this is by no means an exact science, but if you're ever able to find several rubs in a row and they're all facing the same direction on the same trail, then this is likely the direction that the deer is traveling. And if you know there's a food source in one direction and a bedding area in the other direction, and the deer was traveling this way, then that is likely the trail that the deer is taking in the afternoon from bedding to feeding. And it's the same thought process if you're finding several rubs in a row on the opposite side of the tree. If you have a food source in one direction, again, in a bedding area in the other, and the rubs are on the food source side of the tree, then there's a good chance that this is the trail the buck is taking in the morning when he's leaving the food source and heading back to the bedding area. Again, I don't hunt over rubs, mainly because we don't really see the bucks hitting the same trees over and over again. It wouldn't really be a high percentage sit. However, you can sometimes use rub sign to determine when a buck is using a particular part of your property. Along with rubs, you're also going to start to see scrapes popping up all over the place. And scrapes are something that you want to pay close attention to. But remember, not all deer sign is created equally, and not all scrapes are created equal. You want to focus on those primary, those perennial or community scrapes. These are the scrapes that are going to be in the same place, the same tree, the same licking branch every single season. There is a big difference between the perennial scrapes on your property and the random scrapes that pop up in different places year after year. Again, the perennial scrapes are in the same place every single season, and the random scrapes, they could be anywhere. We have no idea why the buck made that random scrape. A lot of times when two bucks run into each other this time of year, the more dominant buck, he's gonna lay down a lot of sign to kind of show that he's the boss and this is his spot. Now he could revisit that scrape that he made, but the chances are very low compared to those perennial scrapes. And depending on when you started hunting this property, again, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to differentiate between the historical sign and the random scrapes. But after a few seasons, it will be easier to figure out which scrapes are those perennial scrapes, those community scrapes, and which scrapes are the random scrapes. And the reason you want to be focusing on these perennial scrapes is because these scrapes are one of the main ways that the local deer herd is communicating with one another. A lot of times when we see a scrape, we think, okay, that was made by a buck, and a lot of times that's true, but it's also being used by the rest of the deer herd. Fawns, does, the entire deer herd uses these perennial scrapes to communicate with one another. The deer leave a lot of scent behind on these licking branches from a gland in their forehead and a gland near their eye. They also pee in the scrape. Both does and bucks leave a lot of information at these scrapes, and that's a huge reason as to why these bucks are checking and working these scrapes a lot more frequently during late October. The best analogy that I can think of is the fire hydrant or telephone pole for your dog. When you're taking your dog for a walk, there's always that spot, whether it's the fire hydrant or the telephone pole or that bush that your dog always has to smell and they always have to pee on to communicate with the rest of the dogs in the neighborhood. It's the same thing with deer and scrapes. By checking and working these scrapes, the bucks are not only telling other bucks that this is their area by leaving their scent behind, but they can check to see if any of the does that have been there recently are close to coming into estrus. By checking several of these primary scrapes within their home range, these bucks will know where to focus their time during the rut and when. The better primary, perennial, or community scrapes that we like to focus on are typically in cover, so they're not in an open field. They are near doe bedding areas, they are near food sources, they are near areas that these bucks know that the does frequent. Remember, these bucks are keeping tabs on these doe families to see which groups will be ready to breed, while at the same time letting other bucks know that this is his area. So by setting up on the downwind side of these perennial scrapes, you have a pretty good chance at catching a buck as he comes in to check or freshen up his scrape. The next strategy for hunting the pre-rut that I want to talk about is related to stand location. And this is not much different than any other part of the season other than the fact that we are hunting mornings. In the morning, we like to be on the downwind side of those known bedding areas. In the afternoon or in the evening, we like to flip that and we like to hunt on the downwind side of those staging food plots, those micro food plots, those pasture food plots before the deer head out to the destination food source. And the reason that we want to be selecting these stand locations is because we know this is where the does are going to be. And remember, those bucks are keeping tabs on those doe family groups because they know the breeding season is about to kick off. They want to be able to breed as soon as that first doe comes into estrus. The older bucks on your property are very efficient, and besides checking those perennial scrapes, another way that these bucks can keep tabs on those doe family groups is by scent checking areas they frequent. So in the morning, that's going to be those bedding areas, and in the evening, it's going to be those food sources. And a lot of times what these bucks are going to do is they're going to cruise along the downwind edge of both of those areas. The bucks don't have to go into that bedding area or expose themselves in the food plot. Again, they can stay in cover and circle the downwind edge and scent check all the deer within the bedding area or within the food plot. And so that's why when picking a stand location in the morning, we want to be downwind of those bedding areas, and in the evening, we want to be downwind of those food sources. Again, bucks know that in the morning, those doe family groups are going to be in the bedding areas, so that's where they're going to be spending more time. And in the evening, they're going to filter out and move to those food sources, and so that's where the bucks are going to go to check on them. Another pre-rut hunting tip to watch out for is rain. Rain washes scent away, which is why if we're trying to pull a camera card from an area that we have a hard time getting to, we'll wait for a rainstorm to move in and grab the card because that rain will wash a lot of our scent away. And why you want to be paying attention to rain is because bucks know this too. They know that the rain is washing a lot of the scent that they left behind in their scrapes. So as soon as that rain stops, there's a good chance that those bucks are going to be up, freshening up their scrapes. We see an increase in daylight buck activity on scrapes right after the rain stops. So if you can slip out right before the rain lets up, you've got a decent chance of seeing a buck as he comes in to freshen up that scrape. The pre-rut is a time where buck movement is as predictable as it gets because they are trying to establish dominance and keep tabs on those doe families by both checking and working scrapes, again, as well as working the downwind side of the areas that those doe family groups frequent. Another thing that you guys should be focusing on during the pre-rut is water, whether that's a natural water source or one you put in yourself. Remember, these bucks are going to be moving a lot more, putting on a lot of miles, checking these perennial scrapes, and checking on these doe family groups. They are going to be thirsty, especially if the weather is a little warmer than usual. So a stand location looking over a perennial scrape along with a water source is a great one to consider during the pre-rut. So we have an idea as to what these bucks like to do during the pre-rut. Now let's talk about how they like to move throughout the neighborhood and certain habitat features that hopefully you can identify to increase your chances of having an opportunity. There are going to be areas on your property and in the neighborhood that consolidate deer movement. These areas are called pinch points or funnels. Basically, there is some habitat feature, whether that's natural or man-made, that pushes deer into a smaller location, constricts the movement, and that makes their movement much more predictable. And I'll try to explain this a little better by using a computer to overlay satellite images of certain pinch points and funnels from areas that we hunt. The first example that I want to talk about as it relates to pinch points and funnels is connecting cover. Essentially, you have two pockets of cover that is separated by open ground, and then you have a thin strip of cover that's connecting the two. And the type of cover can vary, and the type of open ground can vary. A lot of times where we hunt, this is two woodlots that's separated by ag fields, and they are connected by a hedgerow. Those older bucks in the neighborhood, they do not want to expose themselves by walking straight across that open field from one woodlot to the other. Even if the distance is shorter, they would much rather take the long way and stay in cover. So what we see a lot of times is these bucks, they're gonna cruise the downwind edge of that hedgerow as they move from one woodlot to the other. They're taking the downwind edge so they can smell everything that they can't see on the other side, and they can see everything in front of them that they can't smell. And a great stand location in this scenario is just on the downwind side where that hedgerow meets the woodlot. And there are really countless examples of pinch points or funnels with connecting cover. It's really any time that the cover is getting pinched down. Again, deer, especially these bucks, they don't want to walk out in that open field. They would much rather follow that cover as it pinches down and then kind of bow back out. Whenever you see cover pinching down like that, that is a great place to set up on the downwind side because it is constricting the deer movement, making it a lot more predictable. Another good example of a funnel or how deer prefer to move through an area is when you have thick cover that is surrounded by open hardwoods. And for this, I can give you guys an example from our new property. Now we have several different natural pinch points and funnels located on this property, but one of them is a thick swamp system that runs north to south on our property about 50 yards off a road. A lot of the timber on this property is very mature timber, open hardwoods, and older bucks really don't feel comfortable moving through open hardwoods during daylight. They would much rather remain in cover when they're trying to get from point A to point B. And so the deer, and especially those older bucks, as they want to move through our property from north to south, there's a good chance that they're going to use this thicker swamp system. And so one thing that we did to capitalize on this, knowing that they want to use this thick area of our property to move from point A to point B, is we carve a trail through that thick cover to give them a nice easy way through it, and we shot it out to one of our food plots, and then we made a mock scrape about 20 yards from one of our stand locations, which is right on the edge of our pond, which blows our wind over the pond back towards the house. The last habitat feature that we're going to talk about in this video that you guys should be focusing on during the pre-rut are inside corners. And an inside corner is just the back corner where two woodlots meet. So you have an open field, and then there's two woodlots that kind of come together. That corner is the inside corner. The best way to kind of describe it is if you just make like an L with your hand, and you have, one woodlot down here, one woodlot over here, in that edge kind of makes the L. The corner of that L, that's the inside corner. And the reason that you want to be focusing on this is the same kind of concept as the connecting cover. Deer do not want to walk in that open field. So if a deer is down here in this woodlot and wants to get over here to this woodlot, he is not going to want to walk across that open field and expose himself. He is going to stay hidden within the cover, follow that edge, and then he's going to cut up to that other woodlot. So if you're able to identify an inside corner on the area that you hunt, this is a great location to set up as deer movement is being consolidated and constricted as they move around that corner. So hopefully that makes sense, guys. Basically, you're trying to identify areas where deer movement is being pinched down, consolidated, or constricted by either a natural or man-made habitat feature, or if you are in cover, maybe it is open cover. Not all cover is the same, and you're trying to focus on an area of thick cover that runs within more open cover so the deer can stay hidden and secure within that thick cover. And finally, the last thing that I want to talk about as it relates to pre-rut hunting strategy is something that we talk about in a lot of our strategy videos, and that's when should you be going out to hunt, and that's right after a cold front moves through. deer movement really increases post cold front. If you have several days of fairly consistent weather and then a front moves through, that temperature drops, barometric pressure rises, the wind dies down, this is when you're gonna see a lot more daylight activity from those older bucks. So if you're able to, and I know not everyone can plan their hunts around the weather, most of us have 9 to 5 jobs, but if you're able to, try your best to save your better stands for those post cold front hunts. But guys, it's gonna wrap it up for today's video on how we like to hunt the pre-rut. If you guys have any additional strategies or if you have any questions, please drop those in the comment section below. I'll get back to those as soon as I can. Good luck out there, guys, and we will see you in the next video.